Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel where I talk about fantasy books, mythological books, and sometimes science fiction from a storytelling perspective. Today, The Eye of the World. Robert Jordan, are you one of those who grew up in the 90s, 80s, 90s maybe, or later, but you started with Lord of the Rings and then continued to other fantasy? Uh, for me, it was Lord of the Rings, it was Dark Tower series, it was Narnia, Malazan, as you know, other book series. So it took me a while to get to Eye of the World, and I've been a bit skeptical because I've heard a lot. It's maybe not that as good as Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, maybe an unfair comparison in a way, but I decided to try to read this book. I've been doing that for the last 2 weeks and finished the book and want to tell you my impression on why you should read the book because I really enjoy Eye of the World and I will continue to The Great Hunt. I'm also reading Ryan Cahills Bound and Broken series, and there are some similarities between Cahill and Jordan, and Cahill and Tolkien, and Jordan and Tolkien, and so on, back and forth. Of course, they inspire each other. I will talk a bit about that too, and why that not necessarily needs to be a problem. On the contrary, it might be very positive. But Eye of the World is an epic fantasy, a very classic style. You will recognize a lot, and I will read the summary of the book, non-spoilers, of course. It says like this: the wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legends fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. In the third age, an age of prophecy, when the world and time themselves hang in balance, a wind rises in the mountains of mist. And Rand Al Thor is called, he is the protagonist. Though the spring festival of Beltane comes tomorrow, it is a year without spring, a year when green things fail and hope is dying. It is a year of strangers, of a lady, a gleeman with his tales of heroes, a peddler with news of the present, of war with Geldan, far away, and the rising of a false dragon. The savior whose coming foretold and dreaded will bring a new breaking to the world. But the worst strangers are monsters, Rand thought only legend. The bestial Trolloc and the horrifying half-man whose eyeless gaze is fear. They want a boy on the brink of manhood, born within a certain span of months. They want Rand himself, or his burly, deliberate friend Perrin, or the prankster Matt. It is a world where nothing is what it seems, not Nineveh, the village wisdom who can read the wind, not Moraine, the lady from outside whose beauty hides a terrifying identity and a power that seemed only yesterday to be the stuff of legend, not the lady's companion Lan, whose chameleon cloak is a stranger than fluttering multi-hued garment that proclaims the gleeman's trade of old Tom Marilyn, and not Egwene, the innkeeper's dark-haired daughter, caught between childhood and womanhood, between love of Rad and determination to become all that her destiny would make her. When you listen to this, and you get really the impression, I would say, of Lord of the Rings-esque fantasy, and it is true. And I heard a commentary here on YouTube or BookTube that actually Robert Jordan had to write like that because publishers would not publish if it was not similar to Tolkien. That's interesting. Like the same today, we compare a lot to Game of Thrones. I suppose many publishers do because they think that is profitable, and the same thing. So the story starts in Edmund Field, and it's the pastoral England, and that is similar, of course, to Lord of the Rings and also the Bound and Broken series. And here's a map, which I think you can see if I hold it like that, which also looks a little bit like all other kind of fantasy. So this is belongs to a group of fantasy books, I would say. And the three village people that are brought to this adventure is Then Rand, Althor, it's Matt, and it's Perrin. And actually the names here, especially Perrin, reminds me of Peregrine Took, for example. But as far as I know, they are only humans here so far. Not there are other races, of course, but the three we start to follow in Edmondsfield are humans. Quite early in the book, we get to understand that there is tensions around this part of the world in Wheel of Time, and they are attacked early by Trollocs. And Trollocs is a kind of orc-like creatures. They don't look like orcs. They have fur and they have goat horn and they have hooves, for example, more like a Chicago Bull logo, maybe. I'm not sure. That's how I depicted it, at least in my head, especially the red one who looks angry. And also the woman Moraine, which is a kind of magician, and her warder Lan, who is quite a mysterious guy. They come to the village approximately at the same time, and they are here to inform Rand, Matt, and Perrin what peril they are in. As I said, this is a village boys. It's on the countryside. They have, of course, been living there in Edmondsfield for a long time, and they have forgotten their past, and they think they are only ordinary people who wants to live an ordinary life. That is, of course, not so, because then we wouldn't have 14 books, which is the number of books the Wheel of Time series. They get the information from Moraine that they are under threat and that the Dark One is searching for them. And I must say immediately that there are so many names that evoke Lord of the Rings feelings. I will mention a few in a little minute. And but when you read about them and you come further into the book, actually quite long into the book, the first one is a big one. It's 800 pages. But the further you come, the cloak of Lord of the Rings or the inspiration of Lord of the Rings become less. It doesn't become completely less in this one, but I suppose it will become less over time, and I'm curious to follow that and see what Robert Jordan can do. He has sold, as you know, many million of copies. I don't have the number in my head, but he's one of the best-selling fantasy authors out there, so he must have done something right to attract people. And if you sell a lot of books, you don't write in niche form, so you have to be a bit broad, and I suppose that's what Robert Jordan did with his book as well. Yeah, they are attacked early, and they have to leave, of course. And like Moraine, for example, the woman, the magician, she's part of a cult called Aes Sedai. It's a women's cult. There has been male Aes Sedai too, but now only women, and they can wield something called the source, and the source is some kind of magic thing or a divine thing. It can be used both for good and bad, and the Aes Sedai are interesting. I think they remind me of the Bene Gesserit in Dune. They are not. They are. Not always good. There are many types of Aes Sedai. They have different colors, and the colors represent different styles. So they are good, bad, and of course, gray shaded Aes Sedai. So that's interesting to see what Robert Jordan makes of it. And you might think that Moraine is a Gandalf kind of character, and in a way, she is that because she is the one who's telling the lore, the myth, and the legends of the world, and guides the adventurers throughout the story. But at the same time, there is something strange to this Aes Sedai that I don't know yet. You might know. Please don't tell us that yet. That feels not so secure. Gandalf was someone you could trust, like a mentor. I don't feel the same with Moraine. And not even Lan, which is her warder, and which he has an ancient, legendary, mythological past. It seems like we don't know so much about it in the beginning, but it will be revealed later. There is a glossary in the end, like always in fantasy books, where you can read. I decided not to when I read this book. I've read the glossary in the end, actually, just to get the feeling. It's easy to get this, academic style of writing, which I usually do actually with Malazan Book of the Fallen, for example. But this time I didn't want to do that. I just want to experience the feeling. So they are attacked, of course, as I said, and they raises a lot of questions, of course. So why here? Why now? Why us? And Rand, Thor's father, Tam, gives Rand early a sword. So a bit of a spoiler, but not too much. I think it was more spoilers in the text from the book cover that I read for you. Yeah, easily we can guess that the father has a much more mysterious past than just being a farmer or a shepherd. We don't know yet what it means, but he gets a sword that, of course, has some kind of strange powers, it seems like. There are many people who travel together, and they will become a bigger group, and that is something I enjoy. Kind of quest fantasy reminds me of the CRPG genre, for example, and it feels quite a cozy. If you talk about just coming home from work, want to read some nice fantasy that is not too challenging, I would say this one is great. And it's great vibes from Lord of the Rings. There are many people around. Perrin, Matt, Maureen, Lan, Egwin. Later to some other people join, but they mentioned Tom Marilyn when I read it for you, and we have a Nineveh as well. So and she's part of something called the Wisdom, which is a kind of wise magical woman in the villages around Edmondsfield, I think around all the country actually. And they have something they call Women's Circle, and they help with weather foretelling and foretelling in general, and they have a high status and feels like advisor to the mayor in the villages or in the cities. And they actually have a connection to the Aes Sedai, which is revealed very early on in the book, and that is something, of course, interesting to explore further upon. Of course, they don't know about that historical past, it seems like, but Maureen can tell them. I think that is interesting themes for the book. That is very classic, not so surprising. We have the Trollocs, as I talked about, the orc-like creatures. We have something called the Fade and Myrdral, and the Nazgul-like, it feels like in the beginning, but then I didn't feel like that later. We also have an early scene in the book, which it seems like it resembles many locations from the Fellowship of the Ring when they went to Rivendell, but there are twists and turns here, which makes you feel a bit, maybe not surprised, but it takes another way, and that is very rewarding, I think, when you read it. There are a lot of lore here, and of course that is something I like, and I want to mention some lore concepts here. And we have the pattern, and we have the Wheel of Time, of course, and it seems to me like this world is cyclical or circular, and it feels like if we compare it to Lord of the Rings, which is more linear, both with the timeline at least as we know it. I don't know what happened so much after the Third Age, after Sauron fell, maybe you know. But here in Wheel of Time, it's obvious that the world is circular, that evil come and goes, that good come and goes, and so on, and that is a theme here, it seems like. And the pattern, it's a web which weaves people's stories, and that is very reminiscent to the Norse mythology. We have the Nor, it's called, maybe Norns. Witches or old ladies who weave the pattern of life, the thread, how long it should be, and what can happen. And you are not aware if you have been weaved by the pattern. Not everyone is part of the pattern, but obviously Rand, Perrin, and Matt is part of the pattern. So destiny has something up for them, and they don't know why, and that is the adventure they are going to. And actually, Maureen knows a lot about that, of course, it seems. So um, they are caught in this story. I heard an interview with Robert Jordan. He said that this was like a story where the protagonist is a bit of reluctant to go on the adventure, and I'm not sure. In a way, it's true. I think maybe Frodo was only reluctant for a second, maybe, and um, in the Bound and the Broken, the protagonist Kalen is very reluctant because he also goes back for a while. I'm not sure about the reluctancy here, but it maybe comes more reluctant feelings from his friends, Matt and Perrin, I would say. But I get the idea, and I get that he wants to put in these themes to make it differ from Lord of the Rings. But at the end of the day, we have quite classic epic fantasy, which is not bad and it's not wrong. We have the Age of Legends, we have the breaking of the world, we have different religions and sects here in this world, which is very interesting for me to further to explore. But if you ask like a very direct question, why it is different from Lord of the Rings, another kind of fantasy in that vein. Of course, as I said, the names here, Trollocs fade, there are ant-like creatures, there are pastoral England as the origin for the heroes, many names and so on, many things that it really evokes the feeling of Lord of the Rings. As I said, even if it's similar, there are a kind of twisty story, turns in a different way. I think it's even more of horror. Actually, there is a lot of horror in Lord of the Rings with Nazgul and the Frodo trying to lure Frodo to the evil side and so on. But I think even though there is a bit of a coziness in the beginning of the book, and it can feel in relation to Malazan Book of the Fallen maybe a bit immature, but this kind of fantasy has this always this coming of age story, so it starts always with that. I think the from the 40% and forward, it's maybe not scary, but it's exciting. So not scary, but exciting, I would say. There are also, seems that Jordan has put many characters into one. So it's not like, Morin is Gandalf or maybe Tom Marilyn. The story should be maybe Tom Bombadil, I'm not sure. It's not like that. It's not a one-to-one translation. It's maybe 25% transferred to a character, and then 75, it becomes right, made up by Robert Jordan. And he also mixes different kind of Tolkien stereotypes or fantasy tropes into different people. So you can be a bit confused, and that is, of course, very healthy. And I got very happy when I realized that, because otherwise I think I would just have put this book back on the bookshelf and just read Eye of the World and then not continue. You need to get something more right. One thing that differs, I think, is the world building, and that is not so much with mythology. There is a lot of mythology here, which is good, and we have paragraphs from old books, and we have poems from old times, and we have legends from old times, all this kind of stuff, which is very similar to all the fantasy. That is good. It's not as good, I think, as Tolkien. Not as deep as Malazan Book of the Fallen, though Malazan is a different genre, I would say, of fantasy. But it's good enough. And where Jordan excels is in the world building, the countries, the kingdoms, the conflicts. I've just touched the surface. I know that. But that feels more like Game of Thrones in a way, or maybe more, I would say, like Tad Williams. The Dragonbone Share, for example, that kind of fantasy, which even if it exists in Lord of the Rings, and it's, I mean, with Rohan and Gondor and all these, It's quite a small cast of characters, a small cast of countries, small cast of kingdoms, for example. So this is just much bigger. So I'm looking forward to the world building. Um, and I also think that this is a great foundation for the all the video games we have seen, and also board games, but especially with video games, because this is quest fantasy. As I said in the beginning, this reminds me of the CRPG genre, and I got really excited to play Baldur's Gate or Pillars of Eternity, or maybe the game I think most resembles this is the Pathfinder games, actually. And I enjoy that they actually camp and talk to each other. That is very common in the video games today. Other games that is similar to this, Dragon Age, which I think the comparison is maybe not 1-to-1, but maybe, and very, very um, similar, I think. Also, Skyrim, Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls, of course. It goes to the history, it goes to the timeline, and so on, all the languages. There are different races here, of course, in the book, but not so outspoken, I would say, as in Lord of the Rings, especially. So I think if you really enjoy if you enjoyed Lord of the Rings, if you enjoyed Bound and Broken series by Ryan Cahills, if you enjoy Dragon Age games, if you enjoy Skyrim, and old fantasy, Narnia, of course, I think you will enjoy this one. I think if you are a Malazan reader, you will maybe find this a bit simplistic, maybe easy to guess things, but maybe you can use this book as a taking a break from Malazan, where things are not outspoken, where you have to figure a lot of things out for yourself. And still I can see some connections between the worlds and the books. There is a Warren-like feature here, for example. I'm sure Erickson and Ian C. Esselmont would not like to say that they are inspired by either world, but of course it's fantasy, so there are connections, of course. One thing I want to explore further is the spirituality of Eye of the World, which I really think is there. And there are many good quotes for life, for a good life, for a healthy life. So that is just worth reading the book for that, I would say. I will continue to read The Great Hunt. I will take a pause. I promised myself to read the second book in Bound and Broken series, and that is of Light and of Darkness and Light. Actually, all these fantasy books, they have similar titles sometimes. So this is the next book for me. And I have this epic fantasy passion project at the moment. As you know, I can get some projects from time to time, and at the moment this is what I'm doing, and I hope to share a lot of that with you as well. But if we compare this to Malazan Book of the Fallen a little bit more, of course it's not similar in the way, because this in the way of Malazan Book of the Fallen is huge. I mean, the group that we follow in Eye of the World, the first book, that is, in Malazan there are tons of similar groups like that. They are of course very different, but there is some kind of shadiness in Greek characters and so morally gray, maybe, and in Eye of the World and Wheel of Time, that maybe gave inspiration for other fantasy authors to develop that, to make them even more shady, even more gray, even more actually non-spiritual in a way, because many people don't know what they are doing in a conflict or in a war or such a situation where destiny calls upon you. That is the modern fantasy, asking those questions, maybe more existential. What are we doing here? Why are we fighting? We don't know. But in these early fantasy books, so to speak, the idea is clear, to fight darkness or to fight evil. But that is something that Jordan questions a bit here, I think, and it's not so clear cut for our protagonists what side they are on. It's clear what side they want to be on, but I'm not sure if they are going that way or not. With that said, I don't think this will become a fantasy book which will surprise me in the end, but they still elaborate on many of those themes. What is good, what is evil, who can you trust, who can't you trust. Um, what is health, I think, is a theme in Wheel of Time. So there's a lot of things I can say more about this book, but I will stop there. And if you liked the video, please subscribe, please like, please share. We are actually growing a little bit here on the channel. It's a small channel if you are still here, but with a quite active community. Maybe not so much in the commentaries, but I get a lot of messages and emails from you via YouTube or the channel page, but also Substack, and I'm on Facebook, a very small page that I have there. But please join if you haven't, and also on Instagram as well. So I'm trying to be active, trying to attract you to read peacefully, enjoy what you read what you like, and don't stress. So see you next time. Bye.